When I inherited my grandfather's cabin deep in the woods, I saw it as an opportunity to escape the grind of city life. The cabin, surrounded by towering trees and blanketed in near-perpetual mist, was old but sturdy, its wooden walls steeped in the smell of cedar and decades of neglect. It had no internet, no cell service, and no neighbors for miles. A perfect retreat, or so I thought. On my first day there, I decided to explore the property. The woods were dense, the canopy thick enough to blot out most of the sunlight even at noon. As I wandered, I stumbled across an old stone well. It was nestled in a clearing, its weathered stones slick with moss, the mouth of it yawning open like a wound in the earth. There was no rope or bucket, just a dark void that seemed bottomless. I leaned over the edge and called out, my voice echoing back faintly. Then, silence. I didn't think much of it at first. It was just an old well, after all. But that night, as I sat by the fireplace sipping tea, I heard it, a faint voice calling my name. It was distant and muffled, like someone shouting through layers of stone. I froze, straining to listen, but the sound stopped as quickly as it had started. The next morning, curiosity led me back to the well. This time, I brought a flashlight. When I shone the beam into the darkness, it illuminated nothing. The light seemed to get swallowed up, as if the well were drinking it in. A cold breeze wafted up from its depths, carrying with it the faint scent of decay. Then I heard it again, a voice. This time, it was clearer. Help me. The words sent a chill down my spine. They sounded human, but wrong, distorted, like they had been bent and twisted before reaching my ears. I stepped back from the well, heart racing, and nearly tripped over a jagged root. That night, the voices came again. They didn't stop with just my name. I heard fragments of sentences. It's so cold. I'm lost. Please, find me. I tried to ignore them, but sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the voices grew louder. By dawn, I was exhausted, my nerves frayed. Determined to get to the bottom of this, literally I returned to the well with a rope and harness. I tied the rope securely to a nearby tree and lowered myself down, my flashlight strapped to my chest. The descent was slow and nerve-wracking. The stone walls were damp and slick, the air growing colder with every foot I descended. The voices were louder now, an eerie chorus of whispers overlapping and echoing around me. Finally, my feet touched the bottom. The ground was wet and uneven, and the smell of rot was overpowering. I swung my flashlight around, illuminating the small circular chamber. At first, I saw nothing but mud and stone. Then, in the far corner, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Bones, dozens of them, human and animal, piled haphazardly. And amid the bones, something moved. A figure, pale, gaunt, and barely human, crawled toward me. Its eyes were milky white, its mouth a gaping hole that emitted not a scream, but 1,000 voices at once. I scrambled back, slipping in the muck as the thing drew closer. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, like a marionette with tangled strings. Leave, it hissed, though the sound came from nowhere near its mouth. The chorus of voices grew louder, filling the chamber with a deafening cacophony. I scrambled up the rope, adrenaline propelling me upward. As I climbed, the whispers turned to screams, echoing in my ears long after I reached the surface. I should have left the cabin then, but I didn't. Something about the well called to me, a morbid fascination I couldn't shake. Over the next few days, the voices followed me everywhere. I'd hear them in the wind, in the crackle of the fire, even in the creaks of the old cabin floor. They weren't just calling my name anymore. They were telling me things. Things about my family, about secrets my grandfather had kept. They knew things they couldn't possibly know. Desperate for answers, I visited the local library in the nearest town. The librarian, an older woman with a wary expression, stiffened when I mentioned the well. "You shouldn't go near that place," she said. "It's cursed. They say anyone who listens to the voices never leaves the woods." She told me about the legend. A century ago, the well had been used for sacrifices by a cult that believed it was a gateway to another world. The victims' souls, it was said, were trapped there, bound to the well, doomed to call out for eternity. Her words chilled me, but they didn't stop me. That night, I returned to the well one last time. The voices were louder than ever, pleading, screaming, laughing. I stood at the edge, staring into the abyss, and for the first time I felt something staring back. "Come closer," a voice whispered, clear and sharp. Against my better judgment, I leaned over the edge. A hand shot up from the darkness, bony, clawed, and ice cold. It grabbed my wrist and pulled. I screamed, digging my heels into the ground, but the hand was impossibly strong. I don't remember how I escaped. When I woke, I was lying in the clearing, my wrist bruised and raw. The well was gone, replaced by a mound of earth. But the voices didn't leave me. They're with me now, everywhere I go. At night, I feel that hand again, pulling me back toward the darkness. I don't think I can resist much longer.